So Brandon Moreno actually ends up stopping Deiveson Figueiredo via TKO. Basically, it's after the third round. The third round had ended. A fourth round never began. It was in that middle space. So they give it to him at basically 5 minutes of the third round. He is now, once again, your UFC flyweight champion. BC, very open-ended question, but an important one. To you, what did Brandon Moreno prove with this win?
I think he proved that he won this rivalry, that in terms of the overall performances, he's the better fighter of the two in this, now historic chapter series between them. And if there was any argument needed above the fact that he's 2-1-1 against Figueiredo, his two wins are the only two stoppages and are largely one-sided. And I mean, this one was one-sided to the point, Luke, that I actually saw people coming back around again and DMing me and going, hey, wait, did we overvalue this series? It's actually not one of the greatest rivalries. Only the first fight was great, and the third one was slow, and there were two one-sided stoppages. And I was like, slow down, people. I really enjoyed this rivalry, okay? Maybe it's not, the greatest in history. But I think, you get to that point as an emotional fan because Moreno came out and handled it. He mixed in the wrestling smartly. He made adjustments on the feet and striking. He used volume for the fact that Figueiredo, especially with that hard weight cut, I don't think you can say it enough, can't go crazy, can't go balls to the walls and really flaunt that power on that same level more than one strike at a time. Considering the upheaval in Moreno's corner and camp on the way in here with James Cross out and Saif Saud in, man, that's just a mature performance to come back and one up the guy who's given him trouble along the way. I didn't learn a ton. It's not that he made an overly ridiculous leap. I think he just fixed some of the things from the third fight. And look, Figueiredo's 35, and that punch took a lot of starch out of Figueiredo. That left hook that closed his eye, and of course there was a brief period where I thought it was maybe from the eye poke which followed it. But I really enjoyed the investigative work of the UFC team to point that out that it wasn't. Yeah, man, he's the man at flyweight, and he kind of needed Figueiredo to truly make him, but he came back and the belt is his. Figueiredo's moving up to 135, and now we get to see if Moreno in this division, which has been all fireworks and parody since DJ got traded and Cejudo saved it. Let's see if he can put a run together. He's still very young. We'll have a big push marketing wise with the Mexican heritage, but very mature performance.
Yeah, I have a few things about this that really stand out to me. Now, Danny Segura tweeted this on Saturday night. It really is important to note this because what I'm about to tell you, like even 10 years ago, was really unfathomable, just completely unfathomable, which is that there were, before Saturday night, 4 UFC fighters of Mexican descent, 4 Mexican nationals that are going to be fighting for UFC titles. Brandon Moreno was the first one, and he won. Subsequent to this, we're going to have Alexa Grasso taking on Valentina Shevchenko, as well as Irene Aldana taking on Amanda Nunes. Plus, don't forget, it's an interim title, but still a very worthy opportunity for Yair Rodriguez to take on Josh Emmett. Dude, by the end of 2023, it is at least conceivable. Unlikely, because it's, just hard to predict all 4 are going to win, but you might be able to say you have 4 Mexican nationals as champions in one calendar year for the UFC. That is crazy development for that part of the world. I knew that they would eventually come around and be big players. They're just, this from boxing, BC. I mean, I don't even need to tell you how important Mexico is to the history of boxing. It's one of the premier places in the world for developing, finding, and enjoying premier talent. But the reality is, on the MMA side, they are making vast improvements in very, very rapid ways. This is a historic time for Mexican mixed martial arts, and I just hope all fans can appreciate that when every one of these hotspots gets stronger in MMA, the talent pool gets better, which means the fights get better, the game gets bigger. You got to love every part of that. That's the first thing I'd say.
Game begets game, Luke.
It certainly does, and game recognizes game, and I think we should all recognize Mexican MMA could be on the precipice of something big here. We shall see. The other part, though, specifically about Brandon Moreno, BC, I went back and I watched the fight this morning and I took notes on everything I saw. You know what really stood out to me is that it wasn't like Brandon did anything really super special this time. I didn't see anything especially crazy from him, but what he did do was very, very clean fundamentals. What I'm going to say here is I believe both guys leveled up from this rivalry. Now, you could say, well, Figueiredo didn't look all that great necessarily on Saturday night. Compare the level of detail at which he approached the game in this fight with the first one, and they're just radically different. Even he improved. But Brandon Moreno is just almost a new fighter at this point. He had a lot of the raw ingredients, but it is such a smooth, well put together package at this point that it really is just remarkable. What won him this was destabilizing inside leg kicks, well-timed takedowns, right hands over the top, or combinations left to the body, right over the top, or when he was able to judge distance with hand fighting, that leaping left that you saw. He threw it about 13 seconds before it actually landed. He missed the first time, and then he adjusted the second. And BC, all of it came from understanding range and exactly the very particular kind of footwork setups that Figueiredo does. Moreno found them all out, knew exactly what was coming, had planned for them all, and was able to either get out of the way of most of the trouble or just cause it on his own by getting that hunched over stance. He would jab in open air. He would bait attacks. It's all not easy. Not easy. We've talked about this with like Gordon Ryan's game. Nothing about his game is easy, but it is simple. It's not based on anything super crazy flashy. It's not based on anything where you're doing these wild spinning this and acrobatic that. It's just super solid fundamentals on distance, timing, footwork, all those things put together, building it, knowing the opponent, and he built all of the previous opponents, all the previous fights he had against this guy. He put that together, mixed it with this strong understanding of fundamentals, and it just resulted in a close fight, but really one guy was just better than the other one throughout the entire course of it. It was Brandon Moreno. I am amazed at just how far he has come along. We shall see how long he can hold on to that title, BC, especially if Cejudo comes back and maybe he goes to 135 or 125. We don't really know. But I got to tell you, man, these guys built themselves up through this rivalry. Moreno built himself up in particular, but they raised the stakes for the rivalry. And dude, they rebuilt Flyweight, and when it really, really needed it, not by themselves, but certainly you can say the rivalry lifted it. This was a really grown man performance from Brandon Moreno.
Indeed. And you know, he's becoming a sum of his parts guy. You know, he's becoming a complete fighter, and you wonder if the switching camp, which we assumed might be a negative, ends up being a positive to get a, you know, completely new look from a completely, you know, new smart brain to try to help make subtle changes, because, you know, Moreno he ended up winning more fights than Figueiredo in this rivalry, but I think overall, because you could have made a better case for Moreno winning the decision and the draw on the first one than you could have Figueiredo. So I think all in all, it just came down to very little things, and when he was able to adjust those little things, he had the potential to be dominant in certain stretches of this rivalry. And when he didn't, it was still pretty close, and Figueiredo, you know, edged him out. But Luke, it's hard, man. You know, like, I give Figueiredo credit for making the weight, and, you know, he had that window there to be something, and he maxed it out, and he came back and won the title back in the trilogy, and no one's going to hold that back. But it's like, damn, if only this weight class was, you know, 127 pounds. What would, you know, if he had more of a gas tank, what would he look like being that destroyer? He'd probably look like how he did in the Benavidez fights, right? I mean, it's like, you know, when he has the gas tank to go through some crazy exchanges and stuff, Figueiredo has so many ways to finish a fight. He's been a revelation for the division and for my entertainment purposes. I got a lot of questions on what he'll look like at bantamweight, but didn't he scare you into thinking he was like retiring, taking off the gloves, Luke? That was a little scary for a second.
Yeah, and then he was just like, I'm just going to go to 135. BC, I said this on Saturday night. Would love to get your response to this. Like, dude, Figueiredo's obviously a talented guy, right? But 35 years old going to 135, and Umar Nurmagomedov isn't even ranked inside the top 10. Man, good luck trying to climb the ranks in that division, bro. Yeah, at 35 years of age.
It has the potential to be an uphill battle. We're going to have to see if his power carries and stays on that threat level at 35. If it doesn't, yeah, I mean, he's good. You know, he's tough. He's got a good grappling game. I mean, there's a lot he can do, but his style was tailored to being such a bully in that division. You know, that it's like, sometimes that gap is just too big. He's got a lot of questions to answer with the age mixed with that, but he's still operating at such a high level, even with the age, Luke, that you give him a chance. Give the man a chance, all right?
Yeah, I think that's fair.